Veto session wrapped up, the pre-session season starting, and we are here joined by one of the key people in Missouri politics today, the head of the AFL-CIO in Missouri, Mike Louis. Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thanks, Scott. A pleasure to be here, as always.
So the midterm years, there's a U.S. Senate race, there's an auditor's race, obviously the legislature, but maybe the biggest thing that's going to happen in 2018 is the referendum placed on the ballot, led by you, to have a citizen's veto of the right-to-work law. So break it down for me. You've been collecting signatures all year long. How many signatures did you present to the Secretary of State?
We presented 310,567 signatures on August 18th. And it was a huge day for us, for all working people in the state of Missouri. Everybody says it was a big day for labor. It goes way beyond labor. It's about the working people and the things that they lose if Missouri becomes a right-to-work state.
But now, to be fair, though, there have been some elections where pro-labor candidates were not successful. There's been some legislation passed that was kind of targeted at labor. This was a great day for labor in the state of Missouri by even your opponents' accounts. How many people came to Jeff City for the presentation?
There had to be 10,000. By Jefferson City Police Department estimates, about 10,000.
And I mean, it had to feel kind of good when you've had some of these setbacks to have a day where even your opponents go, okay, hat tip, good day.
And absolutely, it was a great day. I was thrilled to death. I call that the best day I could ever have as a labor leader over almost 30 years of being a labor leader.
All right, let me go in the weeds a little bit here. To put something on the ballot in the state of Missouri, you have to have the required number of signatures in 6 of the 8 congressional districts. You went for all 8. I mean, even down in my home in West Butler County. Why did you do all 8 instead of the 6?
I think it's a reflection of us being told that the election of 2016 was the right-to-work election. I didn't believe that for 1 minute. I know a lot of working folks voted for Eric Greitens for governor, which they absolutely got a right to do, but I don't think it was for right to work. I think Missouri, as you know, is a conservative state, and we've got issues that constantly are bouncing off the wall up in Jeff City, and I think the people voted for conservatism, but I don't think right to work was the issue, and people that think that, I think by collecting 8 of 8 on the congressional side, or in each congressional district, proves it.
So back into the weeds, this process is always political. There's lawsuits, there's all these things that go along with this. I have to say, I've always been more right of center. Jay Ashcroft is a Republican. I've disagreed with him on this particular issue. I know he's very pro-right to work, campaigned on it. I assume when this comes to the ballot, he will vote against your referendum. It looked like he was very fair in how he went about it.
I couldn't have said that better myself. We have absolutely no issues with the Secretary of State's office. They went by the book. They did the right thing. They didn't try to cheat us out of anything. I'm very happy with the job that the Secretary of State has done.
Oftentimes conservatives criticize Jason Kander heavily for ballot proposals, ballot language. I think it's an interesting thing. Anybody can be fair when you want something on the ballot or when you're for what someone's doing. I think the true test of integrity is when you're against it. Can you still be fair? And I thought it was interesting. The first year in public office couldn't be a hotter issue. He came out being respected by everyone, I thought.
He did. But in all fairness, the judge ruled against Jason Kander's language. However, in the Court of Appeals said that no, that the Secretary of State did write that properly in both cases, not only in Jay Ashcroft's case, but in Jason Kander's case too. It's just a matter of the other side doing everything they can, willing to spend as much money as it takes to make sure Missouri becomes a right-to-work state, which we're going to make sure it doesn't.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where there were supporters of right to work that would candidly say, if Chris Koster was elected governor, they were going to put this on the ballot. This was coming to a ballot in 2018, regardless of when, correct?
Yep.
I mean, this was going to be decided by the public. It was just who was going to be the onus on to get it on the ballot, and the way the election fell, it was on you. One more question about the process here. The way you've approached this is via a citizen's veto of the legislature. Give me the real basic cliff notes of what that means.
That means that this, according to the Constitution, we were successful in placing it on the ballot. It says it will go on the ballot at the next general election in the statewide general election in the state, which is November of 2018. There will be an opportunity for the people to veto the bill just as the governor would veto the bill and stop it from becoming law by voting no. We do not agree with what the legislature did, and we rescind that decision. And right to work does not stand. Senate bill is dead.
So essentially it is a chance for the public. I don't know if most people know this. If you go put it on the ballot, the public can veto any law the legislature passes.
That's correct.
When's the last time this has been done? I mean, I've never heard of this.
It's not used a lot.
Sure.
But over the last, say the 20th century, every time, with the exception of one time, when it has happened, and it's happened around 25 times, that the citizens have said, no, we don't like what the legislature did. And that's just something that's kind of unique to Missouri and kind of unique to our Constitution, but I think it's a great thing to have in there.
Let me ask you about another unique situation. President Trump. President Trump, maybe the most polarizing politician that has ever held the office. But I have to say, I know a lot of folks in organized labor, a lot of very good men that work very hard all day long. A lot of those guys voted for Donald Trump. I've watched Donald Trump as he's been in office. He's proposed infrastructure programs that has brought praise. I even saw him one time put his arm around a labor leader and say, labor has nothing to worry about while I'm president. What have you thought so far about Donald Trump, and is he keeping his word?
Strictly on the issues of labor, not necessarily his views on a lot of other
We're talking
things.
about labor today, yeah.
Right. I think that he has kept his word to this point, as far as labor being safe, if you will. I've not seen any attacks on the national level on Davis-Bacon or those types of issues, and I don't see any coming. I mean, Donald Trump builds everything he builds union, and there's a reason he does it. It's because he knows he gets good quality people who've been trained to do the job properly, do the job safe, and do the job on time.
Look, I'm not been a big fan of the right to work law, but I did think when Eric Greitens won and a supermajority was elected of Republicans, they did what they promised they would do. They kept their word. They voted for right to work. I think that's what they should do. I mean, I think anybody that can fault them for what they did as far as what they campaigned on and did, it's not fair. However, if you pass this and you veto it and the public speaks, and then they were to try to do something after that, I think, are they starting to separate themselves from the very popular president here in the state?
Yes, I think that it's going to be very, very hard for anyone after and that we're right back to the reason why we spent time and resources in 8 of 8 districts to say that every congressional district in the state of Missouri helped qualify this to put it on the ballot for the people to be able to speak. That's why we did that. And I think any state representative or state senator has to look at what their district did, how many votes came out of that, or how many signatures came out of that district, which translates to votes. And if they would bring it back up and vote on it again and vote yes, I think there's going to be ramifications.
Before you go, when you mentioned Davis-Bacon, there's been some discussions here in the state about the prevailing wage laws. Is there room for a compromise? It seems to me like there's a lot of rural places like where I'm from, where honestly the prevailing wage law, I don't think you really hurt labor by tweaking. You might even help labor by tweaking some of the issues around prevailing wage, where I see contractors, Republican businessmen contractors in St. Louis that don't have a problem with it. Is there room for a compromise in Missouri's prevailing wage laws?
Well, I think probably the Senate has done the right thing in setting up this investigatory committee to investigate into prevailing wage as well as some other labor laws, but specifically prevailing wage is what we're talking about. I think that's a good step in the right direction. I think Senator Walsh, who's a champion, totally understands prevailing wage, knows what would work and what wouldn't work. And if there's something reasonable that comes from the other side, I think Senator Walsh and Senator Hummel, who are both good tradespeople, would absolutely be willing to listen and try to come to some kind of resolve.
We hope you'll come back to discuss the referendum as we come closer to the vote.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for joining us. Be right back with our opinion maker panel. Former Senator Jim Lembke joins the show right after this.
I've been in this industry for over 25 years, with the majority of that time here in St. Louis. At Republic Services, this is the community we serve. That's why we built a clean fleet of 130 compressed natural gas trucks. It is also why we recruit the best people and invest millions of dollars in the St. Louis area to continually upgrade our facilities. We value our community and take great pride in keeping the environment clean. Republic Services, we'll handle it from here.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Nobody likes power outages, including us. That's why Ameren, Missouri is investing in new equipment and smarter technology to reduce outages and keep pace with future needs. And it's working. We're in the top 25% in the nation for reliability. And on average, our rates are 18% lower than other Midwestern states. Making sure the power's there when you need it. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined by a rising star of the Democratic Party, friend of the show, Jimmy Loomis. Welcome back, sir.
Good to be here.
J.P. Johnson, Democratic consultant. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have two debuts, starting with former Senator Jim Lembke. Sir, welcome to the show, one of the consummate gentlemen of Missouri politics.
What took so long?
Oh, I figured you weren't taking my text. I don't know. And Representative Kirk Mathews, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Let's start with you. You kind of may have unofficially started veto session. You were the first lawmaker to call for Senator Shapal Nadal to resign over her desire and hope that the President of the United States be assassinated. That didn't happen over in the Senate. What was your take on veto session?
Well, look, I was out early and vocal calling for the senator's resignation. I thought her remarks were over the top and really just unacceptable. When you call for a crime to be committed, the murder of the sitting president by name, an innocent man, and why did she do that? Because she disagreed with his politics. I don't think there's room for that kind of discourse in our political discussions. When you compare that to, say, the remarks of Representative Warren Love, which was a lot of the topic down at veto session the other day, where she called for the commission of a crime, Warren called for the punishment of unnamed, unknown individual or individuals to be punished. His remarks were inappropriate. They were regrettable, but he called for the punishment of a crime that had already been committed. There are lots of people who are equating those two sets of comments. Personally, I have a fundamental disagreement that they're the same.
After the censure, do you still think she should resign or be expelled?
Well, I called for her resignation. Mm-hmm. I think that she is being subjected to the Senate's process. They have their process. We have a process in the House that now there's been a complaint filed and the Speaker appropriately referred that to the Ethics Committee, and Warren will be subject to the process of the House rules.
Jimmy Lewis, I mean, obviously Senator Shapal Nadal was wrong.
Right.
Many Democrats, even including Senator Shoup, voted to censure her. But I also think that Representative Warren Love's comments were ridiculous and embarrassed the state.
Of course. Public service is a right. It's by no means, public service is a privilege. It's by no means a right. I mean, the people of both of these districts deserve better. And this kind of discourse is not constructive, and it does not help already contentious environment.
JBL, I mean, lynching is not punishment for a crime. No. Lynching is just killing someone with no due process. I mean, it was a ridiculous statement, but We had Representative Alan Green on last week. He talked about how, as a businessman, these embarrassments to the state actually, people call not wanting to put a development in Missouri. They call asking what's going on there.
Right. Well, so let me take commodification out of it first. As it pertains to lynching, number one, it's just a murder. And I hope we can be friends after this. I'm not trying to malign your statements, but it's murder. And I'm particularly sensitive being an African American and given what my people went through with lynching. So for Warren Love to say that in 2017, I thought it was reckless. I thought it was inappropriate. And I thought he should have been disciplined. I thought the same amount of vitriol that came for Maria should have came for Representative Love. Now, I will say—
You think the statements are equal in embarrassment and outrage?
Absolutely do, because you're taking two things. One, you're talking about the President of the United States, the most secure person and probably the most secure house in all of the world. And you're talking about innocent people who are defenseless.
You would never call for the assassination of a president. I know
I have been on record saying that Maria should have been removed from her seat. I thought what she has shown over her course of her career has been to make reckless comments, to make reckless statements, to do things to her colleagues that debase the nature of her seat. And I think her calling for the assassination of a sitting president, regardless of the issues that surrounded her calling for it, shows that she should not be in service to the people of University City or the state. But I also think Warren Love should be disciplined as well.
It is funny, Senator. You are widely known as one of the absolute consummate gentlemen in Missouri politics. These two statements, it's almost laughable to think would ever come from you. But you know what it's like. There's very few people that know what that Senate is like. You're a former senator yourself. Do you think the censure was the appropriate move?
I think that the punishment fit the crime.
Right.
I think that what the Senate did during the veto session was appropriate. I would ask us all to have a little history lesson and see what happened to sitting Vice President Aaron Burr when he entered a duel with Alexander Hamilton and didn't call him names, but shot and killed him. Yeah. He wasn't disciplined for that, by the way, if you go back and look at your history. Although it ruined his political career. Alexander Hamilton was a very popular politician. And so it ended up ending two political careers. Sure. I think we have to tread very carefully here as far as what somebody says and kicking them out of office.
So it would overturn an election, and that is something a lot of gravity. But it looked to me like if this was another senator, the reaction wouldn't have been as stiff, because it's a senator that maybe doesn't have a lot of allies or friends and has acted in some unique ways, is why the condemnation came so fast amongst Senator McCaskill and others.
And it has a chilling effect in that sometimes it's difficult being a thorn in the side of leadership, being a thorn in the side of the majority. So we got to be very careful about throwing people out of their seats where they're duly elected by their constituencies.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, but this is the distinction for me. I remember when Barack Obama was president and people would openly and actively call for his assassination, and I would talk about how gross that was.
But no member of the Missouri Senate.
No member of the Missouri Senate or the Missouri legislature in general, but there were politicians who would make reckless statements, and I'm not talking about in Missouri, and there would also be activists, there would be people in the community, and I just think there is not only a chilling effect, but there, in recent memory, have been assassinations and assassination attempts on presidents. They are also duly elected, and they deserve to be safe and secure in leading the nation with the votes that they got to serve that term. And any person that has a seat that belongs to the public, not them, to make statements, whether it's assassinating the president or saying that people should be lynched because they defamed Confederate monument, I think that's beneath the office. And I think it, like Jimmy said, it is a privilege to serve in that seat. And the moment you do something, to essentially debase that privilege that was given to you, you probably should go, because you're not going to be effective in making statements like that. Proves that you probably don't belong there.
Let's talk about another issue that's percolating in St. Louis right now. The verdict came down in the Stockley murder case. It was not guilty. Your situation, one of your people you represent is the St. Louis City police officers. Right now, by the time people see this, we'll know sort of the community's reaction. But break that down. Due process went through. The verdict came back, not guilty. Where do you think, how does this situation end in a way that can start to repair the relationship between the African American community and the police officers?
You know, nothing I say is going to make anybody feel better. Nothing anybody says is going to make anybody feel better. Regardless of how the verdict came down, there would have been people on both sides that would have felt as though justice was not served. It's more visceral for African Americans, obviously, because of what happened in Ferguson and what precipitated henceforth. What I can say is, I've said this often, black folks, rural folks, and police officers are actually more alike than what is promulgated. And I think if there was a realignment in terms of thought and process and focus on what makes us more similar, and be less disagreeable to certain issues, I think we can start a dialogue where we can actually foment some progress. As it pertains to Jason Stockley, a lot of people on the street thought that it might be a not guilty verdict. They thought the burden was high. Folks were hoping for a lesser charge, but the prosecution didn't offer a lesser charge. They went for first degree and that very high burden. We're talking about a man's life here. Now, on the other side,
it is a very complicated issue.
It's very complicated because you can say on the other side you're talking about a man's life that Jason ended. But if we're going to be a nation of laws and we're going to have due process, we got to let the process take its course. We got to allow the protesters to protest.
Let me ask you though. You're someone that's respected on both sides of the aisle. How do you? Maybe it's impossible in the heat of the moment now, but going forward, how do you foster where everybody can sit down and listen to each other? I mean, I don't know that you can go forward without that. How do you? What is there an answer to a problem our country's dealt with since its founding?
You know, I think it just gets back to, I've always been a firm believer in my oath to the Constitution, okay, and the rule of law. So I think that the way people feel about this decision, they have a right to be out there.
Sure.
They have a right to protest. Yes. They have a right to be loud and firm about their displeasure in this. But the idea of respecting the rule of law, the property, and just what it'll do to our community, if things just really get out of hand. So, I would hope that we can voice our differences and do it in a way that's, loud, but not, ruin property, destroy property.
To be fair, on this show before, and to be fair to everybody here, we taped this on Friday. So by Sunday, we'll know more about this. But I'll tell you what, I've been one that's criticized the governor on some things. I thought the governor has been extremely measured, extremely active, and maybe some of his training coming from the military and his background make him very well prepared to handle this. I think going in, he's done everything you could do. You could ask of a person in his position to be prepared. Listen, but be very firm that there's not going to be destruction of property or violence.
I totally agree, Scott. In fact, I appreciate the fact that he has been proactive. And like you said, by the time this airs, we'll know more about the results. But I appreciate the fact that we have a governor that's engaged. I mean, and you ask, how can we going forward, how can we bridge some of these gaps? The governor's taken some leadership on that. He met with the Black Caucus in the first month that he was our sitting governor. I think one of the things that long-term we have to be concerned about is the Ferguson effect on our ability to recruit and retain appropriate and good police protection, especially for all communities, but especially for those communities that struggle with high crime rates.
So what do you think of the governor's performance leading up to the situation that everybody's had on their radar for several weeks now?
Sure. Look, I'm a Democrat, but good policy is good policy regardless of party. I'm encouraged by the governor's preemptive response to this in avoiding many of the mistakes that were made leading up to events in Ferguson. I think it is very, very important and critical that he has stressed that organization protest is a cornerstone of American democracy. But at the same time, respect for the rule of law and against the destruction of life and property is also fundamental in securing that cornerstone. I'm encouraged, and I think with his partnerships with state and local authorities, this will be much better than Ferguson.
Let's talk about another issue. We had Mike Louis on earlier. They turned in over 300,000 signatures for right to work. It's a citizen's veto. How does that impact, and what do you think, what are the chances of it right now?
I'm feeling confident. The energy we're seeing within the Democratic ranks is truly unprecedented. 25% of those votes are going to come from St. Louis County, and that's something that I am immensely proud of. The hard work of people like Mike Louis, Pat White, Doug Beck in the House is truly unbelievable, and I couldn't be more proud to be a Democrat.
J.B. Johnson, normally you think these things aren't going to pass. I mean, there's a lot more intensity on the anti-right to work side than the pro side.
Yeah, you know, first referendum petition since 1982. Labor took a big swing, and I think they're going to come out victorious on this once the votes are had. Look, something was said earlier, and I think it's absolutely right. The governor had campaigned on this when he was a candidate to push right to work. Obviously, the legislature has been wanting to do this for quite some time, so I think they did their job. But the people spoke, and the people said, we don't want this law. And like you said, a citizen's veto was the one way to overturn this, and I think it's going to be good for the state once we do.
So you know, you have friends on both sides of this debate. I just think if you look at it, if someone knows what a right to work is, they're almost overwhelmingly against it. Does that matter in passing something like this?
You know, I think the people have spoke on this issue. They spoke through their legislators. But Missouri is unique, or one of the states where we have two ways to change statutes. So this is, by going out and gathering the signatures, this is the right of the people also to be able to veto, I guess you would call it.
So, Representative Mathews, I have a question. I mean, when people voted for governor, I wonder if they really were, we have to vote for this for right to work. Now, he said it, he campaigned on it, but I'm just a simple West Butler County hillbilly. I just don't think people showed up to the polls voting for Greitens for right to work.
I think they voted for the candidate in his entirety, his entire message. I think his message of being an outsider resonated with people. I think for people that pay attention to things like right to work, that was definitely one of the additions. Look, before I ran, I was the CEO and chairman of the board of a small business. We employed 150 people. I talked to business leaders, big businesses, small business owners, and even workers that want access to good jobs. And I think right to work is good for our state. And I think we'll see right to work Missouri become right to work state.
With a minute left, who won the week?
Elijah Haar.
Who won the week?
Eric Burleson.
Hard to argue with. Who won the week?
Crystal Quaid.
Springfield week. Who won the week?
Mike Louis.
Well, I'm going to say, I mean, in keeping with our Springfield theme, I mean, nobody had a better week than Springfield. Elijah Haar, the youngest speaker to ever take office. Elijah Haar, the first speaker in the city of Springfield. I think, you know, you have to say Springfield. When I think Springfield, I think of one other guy that won the week. That's Lincoln Huff. You wonder why the Republicans have supermajorities. How people like Lincoln Huff and Eric Burleson work that out is probably a big reason why. And we hope that this panel will be a big reason why you come back and watch us next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.